Hi everyone, Ryan here with Fight Game Analysis, and today we are going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Shogun Rua and Paul Craig. But before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, UFC 255, opening fight on the main card. It's going to be Mauricio Shogun Rua versus Paul Bearju Craig. Quite the nickname there. This is an interesting fight in the sense that it's a rematch, and typically when you see a rematch, you've got somebody who's like really pushing for it, and that didn't seem to be the case in this one. You didn't have the fans who were pushing for it. You didn't have Shogun who was pushing for it. The only guy who mentioned it was Paul Craig, and it was after his last fight. He said, "Hey, I'd like to get a run back against Shogun. Shogun's a legend. I think it would be better for us and for the fans if we both got a full fight camp going into it. So I'd like to see it happen." And lo and behold, here we are, just a little short while later, and they're scheduled for this rematch. And my hope, and I'm sure the UFC's hope, is that this at least is an entertaining fight. Because I got to be honest, this one doesn't seem like it's going to have too much effect on the rankings in the division. Doesn't seem like it's going to have too much effect at who's at the very top, title contentions, all that. You got Shogun Rua, even though he's 5-1-1 in his last 7 fights, which is a really impressive record. Nobody thinks he's going to make another run at the title. Nobody's predicting he's going to be the man again and win it all. He held the belt at one time. The realisticness of him holding the belt again is very low. You got Paul Craig on the other hand, not exactly a world beater since joining the UFC. He's 5-4-1 in his fight since joining. Although he is improving and getting better, if all of a sudden we heard that he was, 18 months from now or 2 years from now or something, he was fighting for a belt, I think we would all admit that would be quite the turnaround from where he's currently at. So no disrespect to either man, but just trying to properly place this fight in the division. But it is a rematch, right? And anytime you get the first one that ends in a draw, a rematch there's always going to be a certain amount of push for it. Nobody's really a fan of a draw. So here we are. So let's take a look at Paul Craig. Now, Paul Craig's an interesting guy. He's only a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, but he is overwhelmingly a jiu-jitsu player. I mean, he's the type of guy who pulls guard. Sometimes multiple times in a fight. Did against Shogun in their last fight. Sometimes he doesn't necessarily do it like an old school jiu-jitsu player where he'll actually go over and just blatantly pull guard, but he'll do it in a way he'll go for a takedown and then roll onto his back while holding his opponent and going down to the takedown. Or if his opponent goes for a takedown, he'll barely even resist and just immediately go to his back and take that type of position. And it's a thing that he can do because he's so aggressive off his back. Submissions are very slick. He's very well versed. He gets guys in some bad spots. Think about this. Every single win that he has in the UFC has been a submission win. That's impressive because even against the lower ranked guys, I mean, these are still UFC caliber fighters, and he goes in there and gets the submission wins. His striking has been getting better on the other hand, though. It has improved. In his last fight with Shogun, particularly in the first round, I thought he had the more crisp and more clean striking. He was landing some good shots. That being said, it's not exactly impressive. It's going to be underwhelming. That's not his bread and butter. Although I do expect it to be better in this fight than it was in his last one and the one before that. So he's the guy with the real room for improvement. Then on the other hand, you've got Shogun, former champion. I mean, he is a legend, been in the sport forever. He was one of the first guys that I was like really following, really getting into. He just had that aggressive style coming out of Brazil, training at the legendary Shoot the Box gym where these guys just have legendary sparring sessions, getting at it, super aggressive. It's interesting, since those days, we found out that getting in all those legendary wars in the gym is going to take years off your career. It's not exactly the way to do it. But back then, people had a different outlook on stuff. They thought that if you went in there and you just hit it hard every day and you were training constantly at the highest level against just absolute savages, that whoever made it out of there would just be able to steamroll anybody else, that they would just be the creme de la creme and the very top. And in some ways, that works out, but in other ways, it's just not the way to go. Like I said, it'll end up taking years off your career. You end up taking way too much damage, injuries. That's not what sparring's about. And they've definitely become a lot better since then, but he's one of those original guys. He was there back in the day, still in the sport now. It seems a little bit odd that he's only 32 years old, but it just goes to show how long he's been around and how early he started his professional career. So you look at Shogun, he's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he doesn't use it. I mean, the last time he got a submission win was back in the Pride days. He doesn't even have one in the UFC. It was 2006 against Kevin Randleman. So any old school MMA fans will recognize that name. But those were the Pride days. Since then, although he still possesses that black belt, he is a man who has become known for his Muay Thai. His aggressive striking, he comes out in that classic Muay Thai stance, uses that head and upper body movement that you see from shoot the box fighters, and he just goes in there and loves to get after it. He's got a lead left hook that he uses that's great. He's got some really good low kicks. Also has a body kick that he'll bring it up top and use it as a body kick on occasion, and a big overhand right. That's his bread and butter, and figuring out how to land it, getting in there and getting his shots. Now, all that being said, as he's been getting older, as he's taken way more damage in his career, because he has been in some wars and he's got a lot of damage on him. Not only is he 38 years old, which is old for a fighter, but it's the damage that he's accumulated in some of these wars that he's taken. He's become a little bit more hesitant in getting that shot off. He's become a little bit more lethargic, a little bit more heavy with his feet, with his movement. It's the type of thing that you just see happen with older fighters, and we're seeing it happen with Shogun. His skills are clearly on the decline from where they were when they were at their absolute peak. Now, he's still got power, and if he hits a guy, he can hurt him, he can still get shots off, but he takes way more shots than before, and he doesn't land with the frequency that we're used to seeing. So, the question becomes, what's it going to look like when these two step into the octagon at UFC 255? Well, I think it's going to be an interesting fight how this one goes. If you look at their first fight, there's not a lot of reason to believe that either gentleman is really even planning to change up their game plan that much. You look at the first round that come out, I think Shogun's going to come out and he's going to be right in his face. He's not a guy who's hard to find, doesn't dance around. Paul Craig, exact same thing. Paul Craig's, I think he's actually going to do decent in the striking, just like he did in the first round of their last fight. He's going to land a few shots. Maybe he tries that spinning wheel kick, comes with some straight hard punches. I think he'll do all right. I think he'll land some shots. And I'm hoping, based off of some things that he said in the interview and the fact that he got a loss the last time, that he's actually going to take a slightly different game plan. Now, is he going to go to his back? Is he going to accept being on his back and trying to be aggressive? Absolutely. To think anything different would be ridiculous. That's his game. Even though that's exactly why he lost the fight the last time. Shogun had all that top control. He was on top all that time. And even though he wasn't really doing that much, that was enough for two of the judges to give him the second and the third round, which is why it ended up being a draw. And I think Paul Craig is going to learn from that. So they come out in this one. They're shooting a few shots at each other. I think Paul Craig will get the better of the exchanges. He is going to end up going to his back, whether it's him going for a takedown and it going down, or Shogun ended up going for a takedown and it going down. Shogun's going to end up on top. Paul Craig's going to be on his back. And while he's on his back, Craig is going to look for some submissions. Not confident that he's going to be able to catch Shogun in anything. That is one of the things that black belt gives Shogun, right? It gives him a high fight IQ, gives him a lot of experience, and the odds of him getting caught in a submission, I don't think they're very high. I think he's going to be good enough to defend him. But Craig will probably get him in a bad spot or two and maybe able to transition that to him being on top control or then standing up and landing some more damage. I really don't think Shogun's going to be able to get a lot done in this fight. Like I mentioned before, I think he's just older. I think he's not pulling the trigger as much as he used to, holding on to his shots a little bit more. You looked at him in that Nogueira fight, it was not good. Both of those guys are old, way past their prime, and Nogueira was still landing a lot of shots on Shogun. He just gets caught with a lot of things. Craig being the younger, bigger, stronger guy, really slick and comfortable off his back. I just see more ways for him to win. I see him as the guy who's got a lot more room for improvement since their last fight. So going with Paul Craig on this one, going to take him by decision. Even though he loves to come out with those submission victories, I don't think he's going to be able to pull that one off against Shogun. But I do think he'll come out with the decision victory on this one. And where does Shogun go from here? Right? That's what the interesting question is. So let me know what you guys think. Is Paul Craig going to be able to pull this one out? Is Shogun able to hold off Father Time for one more fight and pull out another victory? Let me know.